I'm Madison.
I'm Morgan.
I'm Trygve.
And I'm Nick.
And we're going to be talking to you about the Air Force Academy that we attended in Colorado.
So we attended the National Character and Leadership Symposium in Colorado Springs, Colorado at an Air Force base.
We got to follow around a cadet for a couple days and just kind of see their lifestyles.
So all four of us had the opportunity to hear speakers talk along subjects of military leadership, character. Trygve and I went to one about cybersecurity. So it was a vast variety of topics, and over the course of the 2 days we got to see all different aspects at some point.
So I'll go ahead and talk about the speaker that kind of stood out to me a lot. He was a 93-year-old World War II veteran. He just kind of went through and told his life story, and I was amazed at the dates that he could remember. He could remember like every day of his life. He was listening to the radio, and then they said that they needed people to enlist or people to serve in the World War II, so he decided that that's what he wanted to do, and at that moment he's like, I want to become a pilot. And then he talked about how he went to go talk to the recruit, and he had to take an eye test and he failed it. So he said he went home and he memorized the whole entire eye chart and then went back and passed. And so then he got to go to tons of different places, and like I said, every single place he went, almost like every single year, he had a date that he knew exactly where he was and what he was doing. He said, do something nice for someone every day of your life, and don't tell anyone about what you did. And then the coolest thing I thought was he said, our life is not about collecting things, it's about serving each other. So that was pretty interesting guy.
The speaker that stuck out to me, his name was Donovan Campbell, and he was a former Marine and really talked about his experiences through combat. And so he kind of touched on four main points that he wanted to address like in his speech. And the first one being the virtue of humility, and he talked about how he defined humility as thinking of ourselves less and not thinking less of ourselves. And so he really addressed how like to know who you are and not to be afraid of like showing who you are. And he made a point that I really liked, and he talked about how at the end of the day he always asks himself like, did I give everything today? And so that was kind of a point that I really kept with me. His third point that he talked about was servant leadership, and he asked the three questions: what's your mission, who do I want to become, and what is your vision? And so he really addressed these three questions to describe his servant leadership. And then fourth, he talked about the virtue of courage, and he said that we live in a world of uncertainty. We never know what's going to happen next, and so we really need to find a sense of mission and purpose to drive us to be the best people we can be, and we need to communicate culture and live out our values, and that he made the point that values are caught and not taught. So he was my favorite speaker just because of the four valid points he made in his speech.
My favorite speaker was Colonel Lee Ellis, who fought in Vietnam as a pilot, and until his plane was shot down, he was a prisoner of war for 2 years, I believe. And his story reflected on his time as a prisoner and how they were kept in solitude or with these group of guys that they became eventually very close with, and however he looked up to his peers around them, and how when they were taken out of the cells and tortured for information to help with the war, that some people would break and how others would come back and they'd be strong and motivated to do more and do better, and how he looked at these guys and never understood how they could do so well and last so long. And he'd ask them, be like, what's your secret? How do you survive all this torture? And one of the guys responded to him, just do your best. Go out and do your best. And your best may not be the same as ours, but it's important to do everything you can to withhold as much information as you can, up to the point where they're like permanently physically or mentally hurting you. And so he took that with him through the rest of the time in the camp and through the rest of his life. And that was one of his really main speaking points about how if you go out and do your best every day, that things aren't going to go wrong for you. Things are going to look up, and people can't say bad things about you or say anything that like you didn't do your best, and you're a leader then. And so he was my favorite because of how captivating his story was and how powerful his message was to go with it.
So my favorite speaker was Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Basic. He spoke, the title of his presentation was The Warrior in the Moment, so how to be the person you want to be in moments of crisis or in other situations where you've, in your mind, imagined how you might behave or act, or how you're going to respond to certain scenarios. He had a multi-step process that he basically said that your decision-making process goes through. One most important thing I took away from it was his idea of this decision-action gap. So there's a moment between your decision and actually taking action, that there's that line that you have to cross. And then he spoke about the different factors that might make it harder for you, or resist factors that resist you actually crossing that gap. One factor mostly being the people that you surround yourself with. So he said people that you surround yourself with either can be a pulling force that prevents you from taking that action, saying things like you can't do it, or why would you do that, questioning what your decisions are. But then he said basically along the lines of, then surround yourself with people that will, rather than being a resisting force, being a pulling force to get you across that action, being motivated and encouraging you to do those actions. In addition, to be the person you want to be in a certain moment, he talked about your lens and how you see the world or situations. So he said the people that you surround you as well can adjust your lens. He spoke about incidences in his childhood through sports, for example. If he wasn't the greatest athlete, that coaches that weren't motivating him to work hard or do well adjusted his lens to not be as motivating or as optimistic with his position in athletics in the future. But then he also came across, for example, coaches that did encourage him to work hard and were optimistic about his abilities in that respective sport, which then changed his lens. So he said your lens is dynamic, and that it changes as you progress throughout life, and that it's important to realize at what moment is your lens at, and that how other people are changing your lens, and the things you say may potentially change other people's lens. So I thought he had a good perspective on how to be the person you want to be, and that it was one cool thing about his presentation, that it was universal in the sense that he spoke about it in terms of athletics, military. The things he talked about could also be applied to academics, co-curriculars, extracurriculars, and really any facet of life. So it was one of those speeches that you could take away a lot from and apply it to a lot of different situations.
Aside from all the speakers that we got to listen to, we also got to follow around a cadet and just kind of see their lifestyles and stuff and how different they are from ours. My first day I was there, I went to work out with my cadet and her roommates, and as soon as I walked in, every single person had the exact same outfit on. They had a rule there that before 4 o'clock you have to have a certain shirt and certain shorts on.
One experience I thought was very interesting is the lunchroom, and I never really expected to have lunch with so many people, but their lunchroom was ginormous, and I think we can all attest to that. So the academy had roughly like 4,000 students, and so they all ate lunch at the same time.
One of the biggest things that struck me was the toughness of everyone there. They're all our age, normal college kids for the most part, but everything they do is like a whole nother level. Their days are packed from morning till night with just stuff they need to do that like we would never have to do. I was very impressed with just the determination and motivation is unparalleled by anything I've seen on like a normal college campus.
The cadets themselves had really cool opportunities that are really unique to being at the Air Force Academy. I know my cadet's roommate, he during the summer they have different training because they do extend their academics a little bit into what we consider our summer. And last year he learned how to parachute out of an airplane, and I remember him telling me, what 20-year-old can say that I'm certified to jump out of a plane by myself?
Overall, I think we really all had a very good experience, something that we would never have experienced without this opportunity. So I think we can all say we really learned a lot and kind of grew within ourselves. So.
Overall, it was a really good experience, and I think we can all attest that it was inspirational and impactful.
And we thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely,
Getting
yes,
us
thank
there.
you. Okay, I'll go first. Okay.